Welcome to another CAHME CLC, actually /CMC session today. Thank you for joining us. My name is Melissa Cross, as many of you already know. I'm the Director of Education with CAHME, and we are happy to have today here the University of Phoenix. Very special session today because they recently became a CAHME Mentorship Circle program back in November, reflecting on their reaccreditation of 7 years with us in CAHME, which was noted significantly with a number of strengths. And one of the strengths they're going to touch upon today that was identified by the site visit team was their commitment to diversity and inclusion, specifically their Inclusive Leadership Summit. What you're going to learn about today is how the summit functions within the core mission of the university. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Heather Steinis, the Associate Dean, also a CAHME site visitor, who will facilitate the discussion today amongst her panel. So Heather?
Thank you so much, Melissa, and thank you to CAHME and Dr. Stanowski for inviting us to be a member of the CAHME Mentorship Circle. It's a real honor, and we are absolutely thrilled today to be here to discuss our efforts, our program efforts, and university-wide efforts to create an inclusive environment for our faculty and staff. I'm going to start out by introducing the amazing panelists that we have here today on the call. First, and if you could all wave and say hello when I introduce you, I'd appreciate it. We have Dr. Frederica Living. She is one of our core faculty members for the MHA program, and she is also a corporate compliance officer and risk manager at Southwest Louisiana Primary Healthcare Center. We have Dr. John Woods, our Chief Academic Officer and Provost. We have Dr. Richard Schultz. He is our program chair and faculty supervisor for the MHA program and also VP of talent acquisition at Team Heart. And we have Jackie Lucas, who is also an MHA program core faculty member. She's a consultant with Creative Healthcare Solutions and a doctoral student in strategic leadership at Belmont University. So before we really get rolling, I want to talk a little bit about diversity and inclusion in healthcare and why this is an important topic right now. One of our core faculty members, Tom Sloan, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, he wrote a white paper on the topic of our Master of Health Administration program and how we are strengthening the diversity of healthcare leaders. And he found some striking facts. First of all, despite many improvements, our hospital leadership continues to be predominantly white and male. And it's particularly bad for women of color who are only represented by 5% of C-suite positions as of 2022. This is an issue because the other studies have found that provider and leadership diversity results in many other positive things. For patients, it means there's better communication. It helps get over language and cultural barriers and helps with decision-making and their adherence to care. It also helps with problem solving and their patient satisfaction. And for the organization, sustainable health outcomes that affect the bottom line. For educational programs, we see that health administration programs are growing, but that growth is primarily among white US citizens. And for students that are in programs, they don't report a significant amount of DEIB content in the curriculum. So we have a number of issues, clearly a lot of work still to do. I want to turn now to University of Phoenix mission and vision, as well as our MHA program. It's a few little facts before we really dive into things. So University of Phoenix was formed in 1976 by Dr. John Sperling to make higher education more accessible for working adults. And it was one of the first online universities giving students the ability to balance work, life, and to further their education. And our mission and vision reflect that. We enable students to have the knowledge and skills necessary to achieve their professional goals, improve the performance of their organizations, and provide leadership and service to their communities, with the vision being to be the most trusted provider of career-relevant higher education for working adults. Our MHA program mission and vision reflect that as well. We specify that we prepare early to mid-careerists who want to pursue a degree while employed, but we provide them with the competencies necessary to grow professionally, facilitate cross-system transformation, and engage with their communities. And our vision reflects the values of our program in that we'd like to create a new type of health sector leader who's authentic, transparent, and creative, and who thinks critically and with agility and is comfortable bringing together the scholarship in the industry. So a few facts about our faculty, and I know that all of you should have access to the CAHME Advanced Compare tool. So I'm not going to provide a lot of data today, but you'll have the opportunity to look at that if you'd like to see more. We have 86 total faculty and 6 core faculty, some of which are on the call today. Our faculty are predominantly female. We have a mix of white, Black, and other faculty members, 63% white, 23% Black or African American, 6% other, 2% Hispanic, and a relatively small percentage of unknown. We have very experienced health administration faculty. They've on average been in the field for over 26 years. Our student body, I think the main point here is that we are large and we are diverse. Our total degree enrollment as of 2023 was 2,199, with 769 new students and 659 graduates. And our student profile is that they are largely female. They're on average about 40 years old, and they are majority non-white. Something you can't see in the data, or it's more difficult to see, is that not only are students diverse and in a non-traditional online environment, but they are also frequently first generation going to college students. They are spinning many plates, family, school, work. They're very knowledgeable by nature of the experience in the field and their life experience. They're resilient, innovative, perseverant, and gritty. They know how to get things done, and they bring all of that to the classroom, providing a really rich experience for everybody. So with that background on the University of Phoenix and our MHA program, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. John Woods, who is our Chief Academic Officer and Provost, for a little bit more about the university's university-wide DEIB efforts.
Thanks, Heather, and thanks, CAHME, for helping us today. I'm hopeful that the noise canceling microphone is canceling out my dog. That technology we're really thankful for. I'm excited to talk about Phoenix for just a few minutes today. What I'll quickly add, what Heather covered about the university, is that in addition to our programmatic accreditation, we've been accredited by the Higher Education Commission as an institution since our founding. In fact, last year we received 10-year reaccreditation, and we're really proud of that because during that process, led by McSeal, who's on the call, we were invited to join what they call their open pathway. And that is really only reserved for institutions that have 0 follow-ups, 0 reporting requirements, 0 concerns on the part of the commission. So we had a great visit last year, and wanted to mention that and how proud we are of that. The university, as Heather said, really does pride itself on inclusivity. And it's just part of our DNA, given the diversity of our student body, as you saw from the numbers that Heather shared. Our faculty are similarly quite diverse, our staff as well. And I'll touch on a couple things today in terms of how we embed DEIB into everything we do systemically. The first is that a few years ago, we realized that we do an awful lot for DEIB. I could give you just a couple of examples, but for instance, when I arrived nearly 7 years ago, I found that we provided courses to students at HBCUs for $250 so that they could transfer them back to their schools, because often their schools were very small. And if they failed a class or missed a class, it may at many points delay their graduation or their completion. So we had those relationships in place. We have numerous relationships with tribes across the country, and our tribal students actually complete at a higher rate than the national average for our First Nations population. which has among the lowest completion rates of college of any group in this country. So we're proud of that. So a number of things that we were doing serving students and I think being really good at DEIB, because it was, as I said, in our DNA. We decided to create some formalized structure around this so that people who wanted to get involved as volunteers could partner with the different offices and help them with their different initiatives, and at times come up with new initiatives. And so we created the President's Advisory Council on DEIB. President is very involved in it. I lead it on his behalf. As the slide here shows, we have 6 working groups. We attempted to populate the working groups with volunteers, but there are co-leaders to each of these working groups. Someone who's very interested in the area, and somebody who has at least some amount of formal responsibility through the work they do in the office that they hold at the university for relevant activities to that group, so that we've got a good way to kind of add volunteers to what's happening in our offices, infuse what's happening in our offices with ideas from people who are not in those offices, if you will. So this structure has been in place for a few years. One of the first things we sought to do was really audit all that we do and how well we do it across the university that could be classified as DEIB. And it was an enormous task to find out what people were doing in every nook and cranny of the institution. But capturing all of that was really helpful, because it allowed us to then do some external benchmarking and some goal setting for things we wanted to do next. So this group meets regularly, and I lead it, and we're really proud that we have it. We're working towards the creation of an annual report. We've had for a long time an academic annual report that really, I think, set the standard for transparency as an institution, of providing kind of a lot of facts and figures and stories about our students, our alumni, our faculty, our staff, over and above what any accreditor asks us to provide. And we have a section in the report on DEIB, and we're looking to take that section of the report and write a full-blown companion piece to what we call our AAR, our Academic Annual Report, sometime in the future, with all that we learned when we did our accounting or auditing of all the DEIB activities across the institution. So if you want to go back, this is great that you showed us this. I'll talk quickly about just a couple of more things. And the one is our Inclusive Leadership Summit. And we've been doing this for about 3 years now. We began in I think it was in 2020, trying to find ways, now that the whole world was virtual, and the University of Phoenix knew an awful lot about virtual. We found ways that we could give back and really teach others. And one thing we did during COVID was with all the K-12 teachers we saw who had to go online, who had no choice. We stood up a teaching and learning online academy and had thousands and thousands of school administrators and teachers from across the country join. And we offered that for free. On the success of that offering, we decided to create another virtual event, conference, if you will, and that was our Inclusive Leadership Summit. We brought in well-known keynote speakers. We had several tracks for people to choose from, and we even added, on the end of the Inclusive Leadership Summit, a whole day that for us was a job fair. Anyone who wanted to join, but in particular our students, could connect with employers in a DEIB themed job fair. And it was so successful, with a couple of thousand participants, that this has become an annual event. And we'll hope you'll join us. It's not too late to sign up. We have over 4,000 people registered. And again, it's completely free. And we think it's a good way for us to, as I said, give back. It, I think, helps us learn an awful lot as an institution, and network with a lot of folks. And we see it moving forward, just growing more and more every year. So we're excited about it. And I think we might even be able to put the registration link in the chat I think if we think about it here, somebody has access to it. And then you'll all be able to connect directly with that link and join us. Yeah, if you want to go to this slide here, I'll end with this and pass the mic, if you will, off to somebody else. When we talk about DEIB and why it's so important to the University of Phoenix, again, it is who we are. Working Adults, when we were founded, there were really only small and only a few of them efforts across American higher education aimed at working adults with evening or weekend programs. Our founder sought to do that and tailor those programs to the needs of those students. And that led to, as Heather covered, us becoming one of the first institutions to go online as an early pioneer. We have a lot of data because we've had a lot of students, and we really understand some of the barriers to success for the students that we serve. Although the slide might be a bit hard to read, what you're looking at on the left are the graduation rates of people with what the Department of Education and most experts would agree tend to be the greatest risk factors to completion in our country. They're things like whether or not the person is working full-time, which takes time away from school, if they are someone who has dependents, if they are somebody who might be a single parent of dependents. All these are risk factors, and the people who carry some of those risk factors complete at far lower rates than folks like my kids who go off to school at 18 and I have just a son who graduated 2 weeks ago, very traditional. And that is not our student. Our student is 36 years old, often has some college, but no degree yet. And the completion rates for people like those predominantly served by University of Phoenix are all the way from the mid-teens only up to about the mid-20s. And so when we look at our own retention rates and graduation rates, and we study our own students and have done so, we see that our students have not one, not two, but in fact, on average, 3 of the primary risk factors you see listed on the left. And so for a student who is only graduating at 19 or 22 or 26% who has one of those risk factors, when our students carry on average 3 of them, we've got our work cut out for us because they've got their work cut out for them, as Heather covered, spinning lots of plates all at once, having previously maybe never attended college or not attended successfully, and the support that we have to provide them, everything from predictive models that help us see when they might be at risk for attrition, to the things we do to give them relief by the breaks that they can take when life happens, and how easy it is to re-enter upon finishing a break, maybe to deal with something major that's happened in their lives. The accommodations policy we have for pregnant and parenting issues. We do an awful lot to take care of our students and to help them progress, even if it means they take breaks. And so over the last 6 or 7 years, we've improved our retention rates by 10%, 11%, 12%, depending on the credential level. And we anticipate that that will flow through to a similar increase in our grad rates moving forward. And again, those grad rates based on students who have 3 of those risk factors will by far outpace the graduation rates of people who carry one of those risk factors nationally. So we don't kind of rest on the laurels of those successes at all. We're in a mode of continuous improvement. We measure our retention rates about 15 different ways and look at them monthly, and are always looking for ways to improve them. But for the students we serve, it is very challenging, but at the same time, very rewarding work. And we're excited to do what we do, and we're passionate about it. So I hope this gives you a bit of an introduction to the University of Phoenix. If you were not already familiar with us, or if you were familiar with us and maybe had a different picture in your head, this is really who we are, who we serve, and why we're really passionate about it. Heather, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Woods, for that great background on the university. At this point, we're going to turn to our panel discussion. And the panel discussion has been designed to give all of our listeners a better understanding of what we do at the programmatic level to help foster inclusion and create a real sense of belonging amongst our students and faculty. So we've curated some questions and we'll get through those. And at the end, we'll have a period of time for question and answer as well. But at this point, we're going to dive right in with our panelists. I'd love to hear from one of our panelists to start out with why you think the University of Phoenix model is a good fit for our student, those plate spinners and first generation students and all those things that we use to describe them.
Dr. Steinitz, I'd love to answer that question. And I'd like to talk about the fact that we're very adult focused and we don't waste our students' time. Sometimes our students are paramedics. They're heads of the emergency departments or emergency services. And it's really important to have that not less rigor, but flexible rigor that gives them the flexibility they need as a working professional. It's also great for our students to see people who look like them and who can mentor them in the profession.
Thank you so much. Any other comments before we move on?
Yes, Dr. Steinitz, I would like to add that the university's model is a good fit for our students because it helps to increase the students' technological skills. It allows them to access the university from wherever they are at any time of the day or night. Accessibility and availability of online services are there for the students. And as we see that the work schedules have become a challenge for a lot of the employers, the students have learned to work remotely, and this allows for more flexible, non-traditional work hours.
Thank you, Dr. Livy.
And Dr. Steinitz, if I may jump in real quick, I think too, the reason why the University of Phoenix is so fitting for our students and vice versa is that we're serving students across the country, not only just in the United States, but also in other countries. So when they're spinning those plates, they're all over the place. Located all over the place. And so they have those things that we've already talked about that they're trying to balance, and then they're adding into that a master's program. So they're quite busy.
Thank you so much. And that's so important because we know that there are rural areas in particular are really lacking in good healthcare, and being able to reach into those areas of the country is very important. What about some examples? Can anyone share examples of students that are excelling with this model? Like, what does that typical student look like, and what are they doing with their degrees?
Dr. Steinitz, I can share a story that's really stuck with me. One of my students, Jeannie Garcia, is in the Los Angeles area working in a children's hospital. And she returned to school after 30 years. She has an important role in healthcare as an executive director and a specialty in revenue cycle. She's in our competency-based program. And we encourage in our capstone that our students integrate what they've learned, but also look at their community and to focus on the underserved populations, which we need to do in healthcare. And so Jeannie looked at South LA, she looked at the San Gabriel area, the Antelope Valley, and really looked at the need for mental health care in the pediatric population. And she developed an incredibly innovative capstone program for mobile mental health that would meet the patient and their family where they are in the community. Also for Jeannie, it was a really good experience because she'd apparently been asking herself throughout her program can I do this after 30 years going back to school? She received 100% on that capstone, and it incredibly innovative, one of the most impressive. And her husband had said, I've been telling you all the way through this program that you had this. And she said, I realized I really do have this.
That's a great story. And I know we could tell lots of stories like that, but because we're limited in time today, I think we're going to move on to our next question. So all of our faculty, especially all of you on the call, have exceptional backgrounds in healthcare. But I'd love to hear from our panelists, what is it about your background and your experience that helps you relate to our students and help create that sense of belonging in the classroom?
Dr. Steinitz, I would like to answer that question. My background and experience relates to the students because I grew up in a rural area. I was in the South, though. And I grew up where a mobile library known as the Bookmobile would come through our areas and provide me with a great source of knowledge. So that was my access to learning at a very young age. I'm a first generation college graduate. I was a single mom. I changed my career from ecology to healthcare, and I went back to school as a grad student. I got married during that time. I had a second baby while working full time. Then in my 40s, I decided to go back to school full time, and I became a grandmother during that time. So you could say I was definitely a plate spinner. I had a lot going on as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that's very typical of many of our students. Do any of our other panelists have stories they'd like to share about themselves?
So speaking of plate spinning, so my background, I was in the Air Force for 21 years. And so my father said, hey, by the way, before you decide to get out of the military, you might think about getting a degree. And I'd taken classes here and there and at different assignments and such. But, I think our military students have a lot going on. They're trying to do their job and protect our country and so forth. So around year 17, I go to check in at the education office and they go, hey, by the way, you've got like 160 credits. And I said, well, what does that mean? And they said, oh, you just need like 120. I said, can you hand me my degree, please? If it were only that simple. So I had another year to go, wrapped up my bachelor's degree. And then from there went on to earning my master's after I got out of the military. But, those plate spinners, we do have a lot of folks that have a lot of things going, and then to take college classes on top of that keeps those plates up in the air and adds a few more.
I'll add on to my colleagues. I'm a graduate student, and I go to a school that has been very receptive to working with adult students. But many of my cohort and colleagues in the program have talked about their experiences at trying to get into universities and work a full-time job and have a family. And one of them shared a very memorable story with our group, is that they had approached their dream university, that's not the one they're going to now, but it was their real dream school, and talked with them about how to get into a PhD program there and do it while continuing to work. And after having that discussion, the professor talking with them, or the enrollment type person, said, I really think you should come back when you get some of this straightened out. And I think we all know as adults that life just doesn't straighten out and go straight and narrow. So they're very happy in the program we're in, but that's something I carry into the classroom to remember that my students are living that same experience.
Thank you all. You're all so unique and bring very special things to the classroom that our students can relate to. So we've talked about your backgrounds, but what are some things that you specifically do in the classroom to help our students feel welcome? It can be a very lonely environment online for students unless they have that connection. What do you do to help build that sense of belonging for our students?
One thing that I normally do with my students is make sure that they're encouraged and let them know that this is doable. They can achieve the journey that they're on. I understand that life happens. And we will get through this journey with them. We have a lot of resources to support the students. Listening and empathizing with the students is very important. A student may email you at 11 o'clock and their homework is due at 11:59, and understanding that things happen in life and that we are all in this together with the students.
Thank you.
And I'll add on to Dr. Living. I do some really simple things, like making sure I always address the student in all communications of any type by their name. I make sure I spell the name correctly, and that I'm paying attention to what that particular student really needs. I also respond very quickly. And with adult students, I think it's important, if you don't see a student in the classroom for a while, or you're not hearing from them, to check on them, because they may have been swallowed by work or their life, and you want to make sure that they know you're there and that they have the ability to get back on track if they're a little behind.
I'd like to also add, if I may, that, I'll put in a welcome note, I'll record a welcome video for the very reasons that Jackie spoke about, and also Dr. Living, in that our students are online. And I think that they really appreciate having a live session. So I'll record a live session. During that live recording, I have students that join me for meet and greet your professor. And I think that all these things, not only as a program chair myself, as a supervisor, but I think that I've seen so many of these fine examples that our faculty actually incorporate into their classrooms.
Thank you. Those are all great examples, and they make such a big difference for our students' ability to connect and feel a sense of belonging with the university and our program. Let's turn now to the program specifically and talk about the curriculum and how our curriculum in particular helps support this inclusive mindset for our students who are our future healthcare leaders. Can someone talk about what we do specifically in our curriculum?
You know, we have academic freedom, and that's part of the faculty handbook that we have available to us. So when I think about the curriculum, we have the ability as faculty to go back and forth with the curriculum managers and then talk to them about real life experiences, adjust our curriculum. We're constantly keeping our curriculum in a state of improvement, always checking the health of our programs. And in doing so, if we identify an area that we need to build upon, for example, when we're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, we can sprinkle that in there. But in the classroom, the academic freedom gives us that ability to jump right in and tell real life stories, ripped from the headline news. And I think that adds a lot of value to our classroom and our curriculum.
Mm-hmm. What about the novel initiative? I know we have a novel initiative in our 508 and 516 courses that really helps students connect to the cultural issues they might experience and some of the big issues in healthcare that have happened over time. Can anyone speak to that?
I would love to speak to that. So I facilitate both 508 and 516. And so one thing that I really like about the novel initiative, and I think I'll probably talk more about that a little bit later on in our panel discussion, but for now I'll say that we bring in 2 books, and in those books we sprinkle in empathy. And I think a lot of programs may or may not have that in their program, but I think that's what makes our program so unique to our students, in that we talk about empathy. And healthcare administration, not only do you have all of the core information that we go through that's required, but I think we also need to bring in the human side into the conversation in our classrooms. And when we talk about empathy, that really helps connect our students to what they're doing and make them feel like they're part of the healthcare team.
Thank you, Dr. Schultz. Any other
Yes, I would like to add that our MHA program curriculum helps to support an inclusive mindset because a lot of the students have a very rich background in healthcare. They have the work experience, they can tell the stories of what's going on. A lot of our seasoned students can come in and give experience about management issues, accounting knowledge and principles, and conflict resolutions that they can share with their peers. It also helps because it's an added advantage that our students can handle remote work because of their own online classroom experience.
Thank you, Dr. Living.
You're welcome.
All right, let's move on and talk a little bit about our university initiatives, including things like policies and training and our procedures. How do those help support our diverse student body? Does anyone have any examples of that?
I'll jump in real quick. I sort of spoke a little bit about academic freedom as far as DEIB. And so I think about, we oftentimes have weather situations. A lot of things have happened in the state of Kentucky and Texas as well with flooding. When I think about academic freedom, we really have empowered our faculty to make really quick decisions and help their students out that, you know, maybe a student has contacted me personally and said, hey, Dr. Schultz, I've lost power. I have to move from my house over to a hotel. My assignment's going to be a little bit late. So with that, I don't have to wait for the university to give me a clue or give me permission and say, hey, you need to take care of your students this way or that way. So we do have a late assignment policy. And so with that, I just tell my students, hey, would 4 extra days give you a little bit extra time to kind of take care of that assignment? And if you need more time, just let me know, because you're in a very unique situation. You need to take care of your family, take care of yourself. And right now that's more important than the homework assignment, because we can always work on that. But I'll turn it back to my colleagues, and I'm sure that they'll have some other interesting stories of what they do in their classrooms.
Dr. Schultz, I would like to add on to that and to talk about how easy it is to use our Faculty Resource Center, because we have a lot of faculty. People work at all times of the day and night in the classrooms. And the flexibility that's allowed by the university is absolutely wonderful, especially on late assignments when a student has a legitimate reason. But sometimes you get that question that just comes out of left field or right field, and how do I address this? Our policies and procedures are online. In the Faculty Resource Center, there's a great deal of information supplemental that really helps faculty. And I would also add that if I do need to email you or to email one of the other associate deans and ask a question, and I'll think, oh, they'll get back with me tomorrow or on Monday. If it's the weekend, I usually hear back in about an hour or two. So those are some of the great ways we really support our faculty and our students.
Thank you so much.
And I would just like to add that our university has a strong platform for providing resources to the students. The Student Accommodations Office that helps students with disabilities is there to educate the faculty and ensure that our program is accessible for students and their accommodation needs. I have a story I'd like to quickly share about a student. He was in a course and he failed the course. This was his fourth time not passing the course because life happens and he just couldn't pass the course. However, he reached out to me. He asked for assistance. He said, this is my last course. If I pass this course, Dr. Livin, I will graduate in a few months, which is, I think, coming up. And I worked with the accommodations office. He and I emailed each other. He submitted his last papers, and he was really appreciative that we went the extra mile to understand his needs and what he was going through in life at that time. So students have that strong support and because of that, faculty practitioners like myself are able to take that awareness back into our workplace and utilize those skills to help with accommodations for those in the workplace.
Thank you so much, Dr. Living. And I'll just add, by nature of how large our university is with our student body, we see a lot going on in the country. When there is social unrest, when there are things happening in certain cities, it's reflected in our student body. And the ability to have this flexibility to adjust our what we do to accommodate students is extremely important in order to allow for that, for those life events to happen. That flexible rigor that Jackie was talking about earlier. The other thing I'll mention in terms of our procedures is that we are very much committed to continuous quality improvement. We are able to rapidly incorporate things that we hear from our students and from our faculty or from our industry advisory council members to adapt over time. And with our increasingly diverse society, we really need to have that kind of agility to adapt. So our quality improvement systems, we collect data from a lot of different sources from our students, and of course surveys. We have special initiatives whenever we introduce new things. Like I said, our industry advisory council, and we are able, in cases where we need to make quick adjustments to our curriculum, we can do that pretty rapidly. If something looks like it's going to be a bigger lift, we get that into our system of curriculum review and are able to adjust that to make sure that we are reflecting back to students their needs and meeting those needs, and making sure that our curriculum is providing that level of empathy and teaching them about inclusiveness in the way that we need to ensure that our healthcare leaders are prepared for the field. We're getting towards the end of the time that we have available for discussion. So I think at this point, it would be great if our panelists could provide what they think are some of the key takeaways from this discussion and from your experience working with our students. Would anyone like to start?
Dr. Steinis, I'll add some ideas. I think we need to always remember that large scale doesn't have to be impersonal or cookie cutter. But if you stay focused on your students, it won't be that way. The other thing I think is really important is to remove barriers for students, especially the student that hasn't been back to school for a while, creating systems that are easy to navigate so that the student knows where to find something. Something as simple as the assignments area being labeled the same across classrooms. It just makes it easier for the student, especially those that have been out a while.
Thank you so much. I think removing barriers is a common theme in higher education at this point as well. What
And
are thoughts from the panel?
Sorry. I was just going to add, I'm so excited to share this with you. I think that when I look back for some of the takeaways that we've talked about today, I think about some of our honor societies and things that we do as far as helping our students and faculty to really connect with our students. And I think it's important that if we can share our stories with our students as faculty practitioners, we have smaller class sizes perhaps than other universities. I think that gives us that opportunity to jump in and share those stories. And what I was going to share now that I was kind of baiting you on is that the novel experience is just really, the novel initiative, excuse me, is really exciting because we talk about the immortal life of Henrietta Lack. That's a really great story to read. I encourage everyone to take that book and go through it, along with The Spirit Catches You and You Fall Down. And I live here in Fresno, California, where the author lives as well. It tells a story about a Hmong family. And just real quick, I think by sharing these stories with our students, they're able to really relate to other folks and not just go, okay, I'm reading a book, there's nothing that's coming to life. And so I think that all of these opportunities give us that chance to share with our students and bring the classroom and content to life in their lives, as busy as it is.
Thank you, Dr. Schultz.
And I would just like to add that a strong vision and mission with a leadership focus on diversity and inclusion it's a key ingredient to influencing interaction with and outcomes for students. And we want to definitely listen to our stakeholders and continuously improve the policies and procedures, which we need to regularly review so that we can definitely adapt to changes and the needs that we see that the students are needing.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And I think I'll wrap things up by just saying it's so important to make space for tough discussions, whether it's at a university level or in the classroom. And we have a number of things that I don't think we got to talk about in as much detail as we could have, but we have things like an inclusive cafe for students and a Bravely Belong seminar where people can get together and really talk about what's going on in the country and build understanding of different perspectives. And that's just so important. And we do that in the classroom through our discussion questions. So don't be afraid to have those tough discussions because it really can lead to a very strong sense of cohesiveness and inclusion and belonging at the university. I think that's it for now for our panel discussion. I know we are planning to have a question and answer session, and I will turn it back over to Dr. Stanowski at this point so we can do that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Steinis. And again, I'm Anthony Stanowski from CAHME. For those of you who don't know me, what a great session. And I think to me, what really kind of flows from this is your mission, and then your mission defines your goals, and then you define your structure, your process, and it goes down to the people to implement them. So it's just a beautiful process of kind of going through there, just an overall kind of observation at this point. I do have a question, and the question I've got relates to something that came to CAHME from the Institute for Higher Education Policy around first-generation college students. And you talked about how that's really one of the key risk factors for people graduating or continuing on. Can you tell me about some of the ways that you identify those students, reach out to them, and help kind of support them in the process?
Do any of our panelists want to take that question?
I'd like to jump in if I may.
Sure.
So each of our faculty in the classroom, they have something that we call an early alert. And so I can put in an early alert to the counselors, academic counselors, and say, hey, by the way, I see Richard Schultz in my classroom, but he's not really doing well in his class, and I haven't seen him for a while. And I'm wondering, I've tried to help reach out to the student, but could you also help me? So there's a partnership with different avenues within the university that we reach out to our student when we notice that they are struggling. And that could be a first generation or other student experiences that we encounter with some of those risk factors that Dr. Wood spoke about today.
I will add that there's literally a flag that we have for first generation students so that our academic counselors and other individuals can see who those students are and provide special support if needed.
What an impressive part. And I want to say, you know, there's a lot of other programs on this call right now. I'll be listening to it afterwards. You don't hear that from a lot of other programs. And we've talked about first generation with some other CAHME accredited programs, and there isn't that flag. Hey, these folks kind of might need a little extra help. There is with some of the diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, racial, ethnicity, gender kind of areas. But for first generation, that's a really impressive part that you've kind of done with that. Anyone who's got any other additional questions, please type them in the chat. You know, I see some kind of coming up along here. Just as a reminder to everyone, the Inclusive Leadership Summit is free. Thanks to the University of Phoenix, it's free to everyone to access. And I believe Melissa Cross put that link into the comments. And if this is recorded, hopefully we'll have this link down at the bottom of the recorded session for folks to access as well too.
Add about that, the Inclusive Leadership has a specific healthcare track. So on each day of the summit, there are specific discussions related to healthcare.
Someone asked a question: do you use teamwork or group work in assignments? And I'll let the experts kind of field that. And I'm not quite sure what's the difference between the two of them, just to kind of expose my own ignorance at this point. But teamwork versus group work in assignments.
I can clarify if you want, Anthony.
Thank you very much.
I was trying to type and listen at the same time, and I don't always do that well. And I don't think I misspelled anything. This is Dr. Celeste Chamberlain from Thomas Jefferson University, and I teach in the Master's and Associate Director of the Master's in Healthcare Quality and Safety, and I'm working currently in the College of Population Health accreditation as well. One thing we struggle is a strong word, but our student population is much like yours in its age, gender, and et cetera, demographics. But we have students that are all online, and some get cranky if we have things that involve other students. And having taken my PhD online, I was cranky as well. But so we try to balance that what they can get from the learning, leadership, teamwork, the competencies we aim for within the scope of the assignments that we provide. But how do you balance, or do you balance let's get on a Zoom, meet with your teams, do the teamwork. There's always somebody that doesn't want to help do all the work. How do you balance that? Because I think it offers a sense of inclusion between the students as well. I'm looking for a magic bullet, if you could.
Dr. Celeste, I appreciate your question, if I may take a swing at it. So in my classroom, when we have a team assignment, group assignment, I consider them the same in that I will introduce it to the classroom, and I'll have a live session and say, hey, by the way, we're going to have this live session. And so the value of that is to learn more about that particular assignment. I also assign my students randomly to groups. And then I send out a message and say, hey, by the way, here's group 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and here are your teammates. And then I'll be the first one to post to that chat session, that channel that's created, and say, hey, by the way, I'm Dr. Schultz. I'm here to help you out, help facilitate. But we also need to come up with a team leader. So I'm looking for volunteer. And so by doing that, I also go through the assignment because there's multiple parts to it. The first part is kind of like a coffee clutch. Let's get together and know one another, meet one another, and kind of do those ice-breaking sessions. And then after that, then we get into the meat and potatoes of the assignment. So for me, I'm constantly in that channel talking with them and posting and saying, hey, by the way, I haven't heard from Chase. I haven't heard from Cheryl. And it's really important that we hear from all of our students. If they're struggling with something or they can't find the assignment, I'll also put in a classroom announcement with instructions. And so if there's any technical issues, I talk about that as soon as they're identified. So for me, it's really a hands-on approach, and I'll turn it over to my colleagues. They may have some other ideas.
Thank you, Dr. Schultz. I totally agree with everything that you said. And another thing that I will do, I will get in the chat with the students and I'll read their discussion posts to each other. And I'm like, that was a very good thought process, and encourage more dialogue between the students. You get in there and you let them know that you're reading it as well, and you're encouraging them that to definitely respond to their colleagues. If they haven't heard from a colleague, I tell them, send them an email. That would help as well, or the students will communicate via email. So some feel comfortable communicating via the email, or they will communicate in the group chat. And then some have been very innovative, and they'll use Zoom or Teams, whatever they feel that the team will would best work for their teammates.
You know, I'll add on to that is I set an expectation when the class starts in every class right up front that there will be, and I use the word group and team interchangeably, there will be a group assignment, and that participation is required to get the team grade. That seems to get people engaged when they realize if I don't participate, I don't get the grade. Now, being flexible, if someone presents to me that they have an absolute crisis emergency, then we can talk about a makeup. But that makeup will be more work than being part of just a team working on a project. I leave it to the team or group how they want to meet. Some groups do it completely online within the workspace that we provide for the teams. Some groups get on the phone. Some groups do a chat in the classroom. So that's really left to them. I also do check those areas as the week progresses to see, I can easily see who's not participating. I send a private message to them nicely, just with that reminder, just letting you know, trying to see what's going on, but you need to go ahead and check in with your group and take part of the assignment. And I admit, kind of do that, tell them and then tell them what you told them, with the reminder that participation is required. And it seems to work. I generally always, I think over the last 6 months, I've literally had one student that did not participate in a team, and I've taught a lot of classes.
I will add one more thing. So our students don't like group work. And we have approached that by just recently, actually, we're in the process of developing videos that try to explain the why it's important. And it's essential for career development, right? So we're doing a lot to try to help students understand why participating in teams is really valuable for them and how it's going to benefit them in the field when they graduate. And we haven't implemented that yet, so I will keep you posted on how it works.
Let me jump on top of that with a question right now, because you given the demographics of the students that you have an incredible leg up on things like interprofessional education, because these folks are out in the field and they can interact with people. But then you also have the limitations of they're not there in a single place. So all of this is kind of online. How do you take advantage of the opportunity for all of these folks to have an interprofessional education kind of component, with the ability during that to really access people from diverse backgrounds and compare that to some of the limitations? So tell us how you kind of work through that.
I think our discussion questions are a way that we really do take advantage of that. I don't know if any of our core faculty or program chair want to address that in more detail.
Yes, I'd like to jump in if I may. And Heather, you're spot on with a discussion question. So we'll have a standard discussion question that is part of the curriculum. However, as faculty, we're very much encouraged to bring in something ripped from the headline news. So there might be something that I've recently read. So it really is important to bring that in and have that discussion and have it I post a general question, and then I'll follow up in my own responses to my students that week and say, hey, by the way, have you happened to read this article that I posted? Because it's really ripped from the headline news, and it's very interesting to our topic of this week. So I kind of thread that needle, and in interest of time, I don't know if my colleagues have anything else they would like to add.
I make sure to engage in that discussion myself and go out and encourage people and adding on information. And but honestly, most of the discussion just takes off, and you'll have somebody from one side of the country in the East Coast that'll post something, and then someone from California will say, whoa, that would never work in California. Let me tell you what our experience is. Then somebody weighs in from a nursing home, from another part of the industry. So most of those really do take off, and you really do get people sharing that information.
Well, we're at 3 minutes to the top of the hour. Melissa told me I have to make sure I end this on time. I see there's another question here, and then I'll make sure we get back to the person with a response on that. But just want to thank you all for your participation today. The CAHME Mentorship Circle educational sessions, to me, are just always so educational, because you really learn what people who are doing that excel in certain components and how they're sharing that with others. So thank you to all of the presenters here today for kind of taking your time to kind of share your experience, your knowledge, and what kind of works with you.
Thank you for watching today's webinar in our CMC series. For more information, or to view past webinars, slides, or to register for upcoming webinars, please go to www.cahme.org/CMC. Thank you.